Hello, I'm Julia Cordova. Thank you so much for subscribing to my YouTube channel and liking my videos. I really appreciate it. So last week I talked about two high probability trading setups that I would be taking. One was a short from my ES level of 4380, the Living with Chemistry line. I ended up taking that one twice. If you follow me on Twitter, you saw that. And then the other was I thought there was a very high probability of a continuation downwards in oil. So yay, I hope that you were able to take some of that profit with me. So for this week, I have been poring over charts. The reason I'm a little bit late in releasing this video is simply because I didn't see any great setups. I will say that the highest probability odds, I believe, are that ES will close this next week lower than the close from last week. I do believe that, although I also believe before that happens, we will likely get a pop. So it will be up to us to decide whether or not that pop is a saleable pop or whether or not, in fact, last week was just a blip and we're moving forward. And so tune into Twitter to see what happens there. Also, I think a high likelihood trade is that potentially if you believe that silver leads gold and when it's going up, then you also must believe that it's leading gold when it goes down. And silver looks not good at this time. So potentially gold could have a down week. And then oil is touch and go either direction, so I'll talk about that too. So with that said, let's talk charts. You ready? All right. Okay, so let's start off by looking at ES or SPX weekly futures. The week has begun. How exciting is this? And it's not screaming downwards as of this time. This is the weekly chart. You can see last week we hit 43.80. It doesn't show here because this is a weekly, but we hit it twice. And then we took the short from there, so yay. But so far we've just sort of got flattish, if you will, so far. But if looking at the bigger picture, could this be the tippy top? Well, sure, it's absolutely possible. But is it probable? I don't know. For me, I mean, it's possible, but for me, it's not going to start looking uber bearish unless it gets below 4226 or so. When we broke out of this flag and then broke out of this channel, since we broke out of this channel and met these price targets, we have never once closed below the channel. We've back tested it a couple of times. We've gotten below it, but then come back up. We've started below it, but then come back up. And we've just never closed below it. So it's not going to start looking bearish to me longer term. Not that I wouldn't take the short, but it's not going to start looking bearish longer term until it's below 4226 or so. And that'll be that. If it gets there, would be the litmus test of or what closes below that. That will be sort of a litmus test for me of a longer term bearish type move. Okay, so let's look at the daily. All right, so from a daily perspective, right now we've got some support at this 43.14, although we are below it right now. I would expect this 43.14 level to provide some support for ES, so it might be worth taking a little bit of a scalp up if you are a pajama trader. We'll have to wait to see what happens tomorrow, but I would say that if we back test anywhere around this 43.46, 43.45 area, if you are bearishly inclined, that might be a good opportunity to take the short if you aren't already in the trade. And then if you were to take sort of a scalp upwards from this level, I would just put an acceptable stop on it and then trail once you become profitable or so. Okay, but we're not out of the woods really until we're back above this MA, which for now is 43.40. I mean, bulls aren't out of the woods. I'm just fine. But anyway, bulls will be sort of back in control, I should say it that way, above 43.45. Okay. All right. Now let's look at Nasdaq Weekly. Okay, so I did draw on this line that I feel is a very good indicator for just, are we zipping the zip up? Now, it doesn't mean that if it goes below there, it continues like downwards, right? Because it's done this, but it does mean it's beginning to lose a little bit of momentum. So that's really what I'm looking at. This is a momentum indicator more than more than a taken a short indicator, if you will, because there's lots of upslopes that are not quite as steep as this. And so far, we've closed the week, we've opened the week below. All right. So one opportunity for Nasdaq would be if we were to go upwards and hit 14,840 or so, and then flash back below it. I would take the short there if I didn't already have a position in it. Or, if we get close to there and you're feeling very bearish and you want to use that as a stop, that would also be okay. But I would look to sort of use this line as a momentum indicator. Any close below at the end of the week, I think will probably yield more, at least chop, if not drop. Okay, let's look at the daily here. All right, so we had drawn in sort of a similar breakout line before, if you will, and it looked like we'd gotten above it, and then very similar to here, just closed below it. So it is possible that we have continued downtrend, in which case, if you are not already short, I would look to this next level of support at about, depending on when it hits, this was for Tuesday or so, will be 14,406 if it were to have such a down day. Otherwise, if it gets back above here, then potentially waiting for it to get back below to take the short would be another option. So for now, it's looking red, but we're only an hour and 19 minutes in, so we'll see what happens. This would be a very small upward wick for a day, or a very small upward wick or downward wick as well. So I'm just going to wait a little bit before I make any decisions there. Okay, let's look at Bitcoin. Guys, this Bitcoin chart looks like poop, okay? I did see someone online saying, well, this is a correction in time versus price. No, this was a correction in price. This is wasting your time. If it were to have gone up first and then gotten flat, that would be a correction in time. This is bearish, okay? Until it gets back above 34,580, this looks bearish to me. All right, okay. Above there, we'll reconsider. However, when we drew in this bananas monkey poop line, it got below and it's there, and I do expect it to go to these levels. Okay, now let's look at Ethereum. Okay. Same deal. We did identify this potential triple bottom, not a bottom last week, and it's gotten about as low as it can go without gravity pulling it lower, in my opinion. So much lower than these past week lows, and rut-row, because I would imagine that any lower than here, it will go to the bottom of this channel. This channel, even though it's lower than these lows, is not low enough, in my opinion, to reduce the head count inside of this Ethereum. So I think the goal of some of these people is to get out as many people as possible before going back up. So I would personally, if it were a scalp, maybe I'd take it here, but I would not look to buy longer term unless it gets either above here or, in fact, pretty much way below here. And I would set some targets once it does that. I'm not going to do that prematurely because I don't want to. I'm not a hyperbole person. I'm not going to scare people because it also hasn't done anything. Let's wait. Let's see what happens. Okay, now let's look at GDX. Last week I said I thought it was a high probability of either chopping or dropping, and gosh, it did both. We do have a higher high, but ever so slightly, just a couple of pennies, but in a higher low. But it's not doing the thing that we wanted to see happen so far. And if it does touch the bottom of this channel, it's going to look like triple bottom, not a bottom. So bulls really wanted to hold this very close to this low. It's okay if it dips just ever so slightly below it, but bulls really want it to hold here because otherwise, again, just like with the others, it's going to be too close to these wicks and it's going to want to come down. And even though it might bounce here, that's triple bottom, not a bottom, so it's going to go lower. However, from a bull perspective, if that scenario does happen, it's possible that we will get a big double bottom here, and I will be buying it again pretty heavy-handedly if it gets back to this 31.27 area, just because I think, especially if it does it in a quick way from here. I think that will be a high probability up move, at least for a little bit, just at least for a scalp. I do believe that. Okay, let's look at gold. Okay. So far, gold has been grinding upwards these weeks, higher highs, higher lows, higher closes. But it has not so far had the momentum that I would want to see as a bull for me to be confident that it is back on its way up. I get a lot of messages from people saying, Jules, like, is it doing the thing? Is this the thing? Here's the thing. If it were doing the thing, you actually wouldn't need to ask me. You would be telling me. You'd be like, Jules, it's doing the thing. And I'd be like, oh, okay, it's doing the thing. And but right now it's grinding. And even though it's making progress, it's still looking like, to me, that it may potentially have a down week this week. And so if I were a betting person, am I? It does look to me like gold will close the week lower than it opened than it did this week. So yeah, so far we're down just a little bit. It's looking green, of course, because it's up from where it opened, but to me this is looking like, unless it can get above, okay, let me just say that, if it can get above 1822 on the lower time frames and hold it, because we said this last week, right? If it could get above and hold it, and it tried, but then it said nope, sorry, no, and failed. So same thing again. If it tries once more, then okay. I mean, maybe it's just chopping around on this line. I'd like to think my lines are better. But yeah, so far it's actually looking a little bit bearish to me, just because it hasn't been more bullish, if that makes sense. I hope it makes sense. Let's look at silver. This might help us to make some sense of it. So if you look at these bottom wicks on silver, even though this is not technically a triple bottom because this is a higher low, it's so close that if it gets down here once more, so if it breaches last week's lows even a little bit, and it hasn't, so that condition has not been met yet. But if that condition gets met, I believe it will in fact go lower to this, at least this 25.39 level, and probably a little bit below. So that's one trade to take, is to wait to see whether or not it gets any closer to these lows, and if it does, then I will potentially take a short there. However, if it regains these MAs and starts to look bullish on the lower time frames, then potentially I will take a long there. Although this is not, from a big picture, this is not looking bullish to me at this time. I could be wrong. It's possible. I don't like the way it looks personally. I would wait for it to look more poopy to buy it, and I will scalp on the way down, or I will wait for it to look more bullish to buy it. Right now it's just not. And now I wish it didn't have this double wick here, because I'd say, well, is this a W? But so far it has that double wick, and I don't like it unless it can hold that low. But oh, that's close. I say no. Let's look at oil. Okay, so from an oil perspective, now I've been looking at the weekly chart so far, and we talked about a continuance being highly likely last week, which we got. Yay! Now, for this week, the reason I drew in these lines is because if you look at it, they make sense more from a daily perspective than from a weekly perspective. So let me just go and look at the daily chart here. Okay, so when I look at the weekly, it looks very bearish, but when I look at the daily, it does look like potentially it could be a bull flag. So I would expect it potentially to bounce up to at least these MAs, possibly, before we make a determination of whether or not then it is a down move versus an up move. It does have a lower low, right? But again, to me, this looks like potentially a bull flag. So I don't like to always think of things as, well, now the down leg has started. We don't know that yet, okay? We do not know that yet. And also, it's not easy. If there's a lot of people saying, well, now it's down, then usually it'll at least go up to scare out some of the people with lower conviction or who don't know what they're doing. So there's that, okay? So potentially, I'm looking to take a long scalp early in the week, and unless, you know, these lows don't hold. That would be another problem. And then potentially to take a short if or another stab at a short if it gets to these MAs or so, just to see whether or not what we're dealing with. Okay, so that's the two setups I'm looking early on. I'm going to try a controlled long here, and then later, if it does get up here, then I will take profit and potentially wait or try a short there. Not sure yet. Would have to say on Twitter if when that happens, and look at lower time frames. Okay, this is the weekly XOP, and oh boy, I hate to say, I mean, look at our interview with Uncle Rico a while back. Wow, you know. Like at first it was like, is he right though? It's always like, oh, he's right. Oh, but is he right? Yeah, he was right. He was right. And really what he was just saying is that he wasn't even necessarily saying this was bearish. He was only saying that he saw more growth happening in, you know, tech stocks than in oil stocks. So good for him. Good for us for listening. Anyway, let's look at Nete. Okay, so last week I was concerned. I was like, oh, I'm an idiot. Because I was long over the weekend, and then I looked at it, I was like, ew, I don't know if I should have been long. But lucky for me, I ohmed my way through it and ended up taking some profit on that. And then I went long again on Friday because it had back tested this 60 level. So basically, if this is a daily bull flag, it looks like it broke out, and then it like, well, is it a fakey breaky? And then I thought, well, maybe. But then when it held this 60 area, I was like, ooh, this actually looks like it's potentially just a back test and then more up. So right now I am long, although I set a stop here to protect my profits just in case it gets, you know, it gapped up. So I set a stop to protect my profits. But potentially it might just keep consolidating this week, because so far we've had 2 weeks of consolidation, but I am still bullish until we get to 4.04 to 4.07, in which case we'll reevaluate. Not sure I'm going to love it below this 3.60 area again. In fact, that might be a good area to take a scalp downwards if it gets there again, just because, you know, like, I mean, if it gets below there, you know what I mean? Like, if it gets below there and it's, like, hanging out there, ew, that's not good. But right now, I'm still bullish on it, and I like it. So, there's that. Okay. Potentially, the most bullish chart from last week, in fact, not even potentially, the most bullish chart that I covered last week was Joe. Because this looks to me, and I talked about it last week, like a giant bull flag. Okay, we got back above this pivot and whooped up. So I like it very much here. It looks to me like it's got all of the momentum of this head and shoulders, not a shoulder. Okay, and it's got all of this momentum of this bull flag above this previous resistance, now support. It looks to me like it is really amping up for a big move that hasn't even begun yet. And I've been talking about this for a while. Doesn't matter. I've been right about it for a while. This is going up. I don't know. Not financial advice. What do I know? I don't know. But that's just my opinion. Anyway, make myself big, and it's already dark out. Sorry. Okay. Well, thank you again for liking my videos and subscribing. I really appreciate it. And I will see you on the interwebs. Okay, bye.